what is it going to take for instead of going Crawford first, what is it going to take for Canelo to be successful against Bud Crawford if he starts to give him angles and starts to
I
show
think
different types of pressure that he's never faced or has never seen before?
Talk about Mexican Independence Day. We could call this Teddy Atlas here in Las Vegas, Nevada. You heard it from the champ himself.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Richard Ortiz of The Fighter's Voice, the only voice that matters. And just like the Magic Man himself, we're simply knocking out the competition. We're talking to former multi-weight champion of the world, now soon to be bare knuckle world champion. Keeps inventing himself from one of the best commentators in the world to one of the best analysts to ever pick up a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest, the Magic Man himself, Mr. Paulie Malignaggi.
What's up, Richard? How are you, man?
I hope I didn't chop it up too much, man. I just want to make sure I say it well.
Yeah. Good enough, man. Good enough. I've definitely heard of it.
Malignaggi.
Exactly. It's good.
There you go. Listen, when I saw you in Fresno, man, you were all decked out. I didn't know if you just came from a GQ shoot or you were commentating or what was going on.
Yeah. I when the weight comes off, the suits fit better, So it's
there you go.
good look right now, man. I don't have many grays, so except a few on the beard, so I tend to look a little younger once I lose the weight,
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good for you. Right off the bat, man, because questions that have come in, and it's kind of like the same question. I know you must know. Do you know Phagnasay from Top Rank Boxing?
Probably by face. I mean, there's several people at Top Rank that I know. I've been around them a lot of times.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's like looking in the mirror, man. I got to send you his picture, except you got more hair than he does. But yeah, you look like Phagnasay. He kind of manages the gym in Las Vegas at the.
He must be a good-looking guy then.
I guess so. I never heard a complaint, so I guess he's doing really well.
Good.
Listen, man, I mean, you gave boxing and you continue to give boxing your all 100%. But when you became a commentator, you gave it 110% of raw truth. And sometimes the truth is ugly. Some people can't handle it.
Yeah.
I can, and I love it. So if you don't like what the man is going to say, don't ask him, because he's not going to pause for a speed bump. He's going to let you know the truth and nothing but. Did you always have that mentality, even growing up or even as a fighter, or you just stuck to it with the sweet science of the craft? Or the craft of the sweet science?
I'm an old school New Yorker, so we kind of had a reputation. The culture in New York always, at least back in the day, had a reputation for just being very blunt, speaking our minds. That's where I grew up, so it kind of just became a part of me. But when it comes to people not being able to accept certain opinions or certain truths, listen, I always give a reason for the way I feel. I'll never just give a reason, give an opinion and not base it off of what makes me feel that way. So I do think that whether people agree or disagree, that the conversation that way is easier to have. And I think that's what, being an analyst, being a podcaster, being a reporter in general is about creating the dialogue. You need that dialogue. Otherwise, there's no debate, there's no conversation, and everything gets boring. So yeah, I tend to have a lot of times maybe not so popular opinions, but I never give an opinion or a conclusion that isn't based in something. And when I do that, I think instead of people crying about it, they can give their opinion in return, in an intelligent way, if they have any intelligence. And a lot of times emotion, when it gets offended, it's because there's no intelligence sort of sustaining that. It's just emotion, and so I think people get offended a lot of times with conclusions and opinions because they base everything off emotion instead of basing anything off anything of substance, anything of backbone. So I don't mind offending spineless people, and those are pretty much spineless people, but I do welcome the chatter, and whatever the opinion is, whatever the whatever the take is, be it about sports or other things. Because I think that's what the whole thing is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about conversation, intelligent debating. And also that makes things interesting when you have conversation about certain topics, With no conversation, things are boring. You know, if we all agree, things are boring. But you can disagree
Yep.
with one thing, but then you have to have a reasoning for disagreeing. Therefore, the conversation is elevated because now you have talking points based on my conclusion or your conclusion. There's no talking points based on my conclusion and your conclusion. If they're just opinions and based on nothing, then you're severely lowering the IQ of the conversation, and you know, at that point I can't help you if you're offended because you're probably just an idiot, you know. So you know, we still, having said that, you know, I don't say it's the be all end all. My opinion can be affected by a good point somebody else makes, but again, the opposite point still has to be made with substance. Otherwise, it is not a good point. It's just simply disagreeing based off emotion.
I sometimes think some people don't understand what true commentating is. True commentating is bringing drama. True commentating is storytelling. True commentating is telling you exactly what's going to happen and be able to pick it off before. We're like a cornerback in the NFL. We read the offense. So therefore we know what's coming. And based on your experience, Paulie, you already know what a fighter's setting, what he's setting up, when he's setting up a trap, or when he or she is truly physically hurt. And some
Yeah.
people cannot take that or understand that. They take it as criticism. They take it as you're picking on this certain subject, but that's not the case. The case is
Well,
it is what it is, and we call it the way we see it.
Well, I think people do enjoy that part of my commentating. I'll be honest. I think, you know, when it comes to the setups and opening up the ring for them, so to speak, and you know the combat portion of it, I think people do appreciate that. I notice that does get appreciated. I think when it comes to certain opinions and conclusions I have on certain fighters and whatnot, or fighters ducking certain fighters and whatnot, and my reasoning behind certain things, I think that's where the offended part comes in. You know, I think when it comes to commentating, with especially in the tales you just mentioned, I do see that there's a lot of appreciation for that. I think that's important. I think you know, understanding why something's happening in the ring, and not just that it's happening, I think can give people the ability to peel the layers of a fight and enjoy it more.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of sharing it with you what happened to me personally. I called one fight, and from one fight, I got the best compliments in the world. And from the same promoter, less than I don't know, maybe a month later, I got my ass chewed out based on his opinion. But it is what it is. I'm going to continue to call it the way I see it, whether it's
Yeah.
continue to be with that organization or the next organization. But you know, I stick to what I stick to, and everybody else should stick to what they stick to. But everybody's going to have an opinion, and I get it. I respect it, and I respect the conversation that we did have both before and after.
Yeah, I think that's probably something similar to what happened to me after the first Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight. You know, I was at Showtime, and things were, you know, most people had been complimentary of my time at Showtime. But I think when, you know, Deontay was kind of the house guy at Showtime, and I thought the first fight was a robbery. I thought Tyson Fury, despite being dropped twice, outboxed Wilder in every single round, you know? And I thought he deserved the decision. And when they made it a draw, I kind of made a stink about it on live TV. And yeah, I remember they weren't too happy with me, you know? But again, when you're commentating with an agenda, it's not natural. It becomes, you know, you start to feel bought. You start to feel, you know, I don't know what the word I'm looking for exactly to describe it is, but it feels a little bit slimy, you know, and then
Yeah.
you know, you can't really feel. And like I said, I mean, I'll give you the reason I felt that way. You know, I just felt like, you know, in that regard, Fury was boxing. He was landing better punches. I remember that fight. Even Floyd Mayweather was sitting behind me, and after 5-6 rounds, came up to me like and made me take my headset off and to give me in my ear, and he was like, "Yo, Wilder's losing every round," you know. So it wasn't like it was out of this world, but I can remember that was an interesting experience. So yeah, you know, a lot of times house promoters or house networks, they want you to sort of protect their fighter to the point, you know, because I guess it's their investment and they have their money riding on it, but the way I look at it is, you know, I've got to give the viewer the best possible viewership.
Absolutely.
The best, the most, not the best, because some people are emotional and they want to cheer for their guy. But I think
Yeah.
it's give you the most honest viewership experience. I'll put it that way, you know. And whether you're happy with that or not, it is, you know, I do my best to give you the most honest viewership experience.
And sometimes giving you the most honest is knowing the rules inside and out, the experience that you have. knowing who should be talking to the fighter when he just got knocked out. Should it be the cut person, or should it be the doctor? Knowing who should be coming in, who needs the time with the fighter, and knowing what you know sometimes may offend people because they actually don't know, or maybe they forgot, or they're just caught, or think we're just being animated.
That's a
But
good
we're
point
here
you
to
make.
put our show.
I remember I had an issue with seeing in England when a fighter gets knocked out. They've had a lot of traumatic brain injuries in English boxing, and we've had a lot of traumatic brain injuries in American boxing. So everybody's always trying to figure out the best way to handle violent fights or devastating knockouts, so that there's less and less of these situations that happen. And I can remember in England seeing oxygen tanks being administered, live oxygen being administered. Anytime a fighter gets stopped, they bring in the oxygen, and they make them suck on the oxygen tank. Even if he's not in danger, if you get knocked out, you want to get the oxygen to the brain, regardless, and I thought that was an interesting thing in England. And I noticed in the U.S. we didn't have it, and I kind of was curious about why commissions don't do that in the U.S. It can go a long way in possibly helping fighters not sustain as much damage, or maybe avoid a catastrophic injury or whatnot. And the reasoning I was given was that the oxygen tank could be a fire hazard, and that's why in the U.S. they don't have it. Well, I don't know. They use it in England, and I've never seen an arena blow up yet from an oxygen tank. So you're sort of being condescending towards the fighters, in my opinion, and me as an ex-fighter, obviously, and obviously now a current one again. I kind of have an issue with that, because I think fighter safety should be the priority in everything. That you don't have a show without the fighters.
For them to say it's kind of cliche, because you're talking about a combatant sport. These guys are hitting each other. That's a hazard itself. I mean, you sometimes forget to take the mouthpiece out when a fighter's knocked out. He or she could possibly choke on that. Everything is a hazard. That's why it's time consuming. I mean, it's time that you're aware of the time that's going by, and everybody has a job to do. If this is going to help the fighter, I'm all for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think in a world where we sometimes see the most ridiculous rules in the name of fighter safety, then the ones that should be implemented, all of a sudden you don't see them put them in. I think it's totally moronic. For example, right now I have an issue that I heard the BBFC doesn't allow fighters to use steam rooms. Spoken about England, which I was just complimenting them for having the oxygen tanks, but on the flip side, they don't allow fighters to use steam rooms or saunas to make weight. The other option is to go run 5 miles and destroy your legs prior to the fight. So me as a fighter, I want to use the steam room. I prefer the sauna, because I can conserve my legs for the fight that I'm going to have the next night. I don't want to have to run 5, 6, 7 miles to make the weight, to lose those last few pounds that won't come off because you're so dried out already. So, I think we border on the level of stupidity at a certain point, and by people that think they're intelligent because they were given a piece of paper at school telling them they weren't intelligent, and so it supersedes the experience of the people that actually have done this at a highest level, and so. From one perspective, you have a very good point made, where the oxygen tanks are in the same commission as the BBBC. The terrific idea to have oxygen tanks for me. And I think the Americans are stupid for not having oxygen tanks. But from the other perspective, then they impose this rule that you can't use steam rooms. Well, the other option is worse for the fighter, in my opinion, because he's got to completely debilitate himself physically to make weight, So, there are pros and cons to every situation. But I think, unfortunately, there is no definitive way where everyone's going to agree on something. So you can only give your opinions, and that's what I do here. I give my opinions, and then there'll be people agreeing and disagreeing, and I give my opinions based on that. You see, the way I just gave the opinion on why I agree, I think steam rooms should be allowed, because otherwise you got to run and kill your legs, and you want to preserve those legs for the next night. So that's my opinion on that, and that's my view based on my experience. And it's interesting regardless. I think it's interesting regardless, because like I said, it's one of those things where you're never going to have a definitive correct answer, and they'll be divided, and then, whoever's in charge will make the final decision. And, there's no be all end all at the end of the day.
Hey, Rich Ortiz here with the Fighter's Voice, the only voice that matters, and like FIGHTBOOK, the only book that matters. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. The channel, the viewers, the fans, and the followers. If you're a fighter, if you're a trainer, if you're a manager, any of the above, FIGHTBOOK.com will take care of you. Make sure you register now before it's too late. And remember, every fighter has a voice, and so does FIGHTBOOK. As always, it's a wrap. Thumbs up for Richie. Well, listen, I know you signed with BKB, and you're gonna be fighting in July 6th. What is it? Good John.
September 6th. September 6th, yeah.
Oh yes, yes, September 6th. Did I say July? Yes, I'm thinking of this month. Yes, September 6th, the weekend before the Canelo fight. But I will tell you an organization that will allow you to use the steam room. So whenever you want to come over here to Big Dog Bare Knuckle Boxing, it's
Mm-hmm.
the hottest bare knuckle boxing in California, and it's taking
Mm-hmm.
over, Paulie. You know, you at least got to come out and see one of these events for yourself. And the
Of course,
winners are always
I'm a
the
fan of
fan.
I'm a
What was
fan of
that?
combat sport. I'm a fan of combat sports. You know, I like to support fighters, especially fighters. You know, who are trying to have goals and are goal oriented and trying to accomplish things. You know, I know that feeling. I know I've been at that part of my life. I've surpassed it. I'm continuing to try to stay hungry and stay motivated in a competitive way. Keeps me young. It keeps my mind young. You know. But yeah, of course, anything I can support, I do love supporting anything that benefits fighters.
Yeah, well, next time you're around the area, we got to make sure that we get you down there and
Mhm.
be one of our guests, just to come out and watch the fight. Maybe a little meet and greet, sign some autographs. And you said you love combat sports. I got to tell you something about combat sports. I'm going to talk to you, Paulie, about the future of combat sports. So just go to fightbook.com to pre-register. They've already launched. They're giving you a platform for the fighters, the fans, the coaches,
Mhm.
everyone in the fight game can now showcase their services.
Yeah,
FIGHTBOOK, changing the fight game forever. Paulie, you got to register now, my man.
yeah, no, I'm familiar with FightBook. I've spoken to Mark Habibis several times, the creator of FightBook, and they've got something very good going on there. It's sort of joins the business together worldwide, and
Yes.
it sort of can eliminate middleman antics. You know, where you go directly
Yes.
through that system, and I think it can be a very futuristic and helpful way to help fighters, managers, and promoters sort of be more unified.
Well, see, now the middleman can just blame FIGHTBOOK because you got the middleman saying, no, he went through me. No, he went through me. No, he went
Yeah,
through me.
yeah,
You know what? End
yeah.
all that stuff. They went through
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
And
And
hopefully,
and this way the
be a
fighter is
household name.
also this way the fighter also is better informed as well, See where things are coming from.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I would love to see you get it on with Broner bare knuckle, and I would love to see you get it on with Conor McGregor bare knuckle. I mean,
I don't think Conor
they
will
have to
ever
be
fight.
on your wish list somehow, some way.
I don't think Conor will ever fight again, to be honest. He's more of a I think Conor is more like a he reminds me lately sort of the you remember the WWF, the Attitude Era?
Yeah,
Remember the Attitude Era? He reminds me of Vince McMahon's character during the Attitude Era, where like he's owner heel, and he's sort of the owner heel. In the late
yeah,
'90s, that Attitude Era where McMahon was
yeah.
sort of owner and heel. I see McGregor playing that role in BKFC. Yeah, he plays it pretty well. Regardless of my feelings for him, I think he's playing that role pretty well. He's got sort of this heel owner kind of
Kind of
persona to
bullyish.
him. I don't think he's like basically a Vince McMahon with no balls because Vince McMahon had balls. The chances he took in the business and he went for it.
Yeah,
McGregor never had any balls, so it's more so like he's like a Vince McMahon without the balls. But still he's I give him credit for being able to play this persona. I don't think he ever fights again. I just think he's gonna talk about it continuously and tease people continuously. And he's got a dumb enough fan base where they'll buy into it every time. But I think we've probably seen McGregor's last fight already. I don't think he's gonna fight.
I agree with you. I think that if he would have fought a long time ago. I
But
know
he'll
that
keep he'll keep teasing it. He'll keep teasing it. There's enough dumb fans that'll believe it too, and they'll go with it, and it'll become a talking point. Every 6 months or so, it'll be a talking point. As a matter of fact, when I announced my BKB contract, he posted a video of him on the beach boxing, hitting pads, like he was gonna fight again. And he'll do that like once every 6 months just to tease it, pretend he's gonna fight, and because like I said, he's got a dumb enough fan base where they'll buy into it every time without realizing like, yo, this guy does it every 6 months or so and he never fights. They're not that intelligent to put two and two together. But so I think we'll keep hearing about it, but I think we've seen McGregor's last fight.
I think the limelight is contagious. He can't live without it.
Yeah, well, that's why I think he'll continue to tease it so he stays sort of in the limelight because he'll be talked about like he's fighting him and he won't actually do it. So this way it'll sort of keep him around. And like I said, I think playing the Vince McMahonish character also kind of keeps him there. I think he plays that well. He does have a cartoon type of character to him. So I think that'll that'll play well, because that, like I said, that Vince McMahon Attitude Era owner heel type of person, he fits the role pretty well.
So I know you're doing the bare knuckle, but is there any chance you lacing up the leather one last time for possibly an exhibition or a charity match? I mean, I know
I'm
you
not
have.
sure.
I thought you retired too soon, to be honest with you.
I'm not sure. It depends on what's out there. The reason I chose bare knuckle is because I can have a goal towards it. I'm not sure I can win a boxing world championship. So what's the point of boxing? But bare knuckle fights are a bit shorter, so it's more manageable. Even though there's more blood, yes, of course, and people think it's more gruesome. I think it's more safe aside from the fact that it's more bloody. But I think a championship in BKB is attainable. I'm not quite sure that a championship in glove boxing is attainable anymore. So what would I really be doing it for? If I can't strive for a certain goal and I have a vision of greatness, that's my thing. I'm not telling you I totally exit out. I'm a pro boxer first, right? But I also don't do things just for the sake of doing them, or just for money. Like it's got to be, I got to have a vision and a goal in mind. With BKB, the vision and goal is, I can maybe win a championship, and then add some hardware to my accomplishments. With pro boxing, at my age, is it realistic? It's very rare, to win a world championship at this age, So, and to go a lot of rounds, it's a little bit more difficult at this age. So, the fights in BKB are shorter. You can be short, more intense, but I can handle that. I still know how to fight very well. I feel I just don't know if I can do it for a long period of time, longer rounds. So from that perspective, I do kind of always think in the back of my mind, yeah, I may be able to still box, but it's got to be the right situation because like I said, I'm not quite sure I can fight for and go for a world championship in boxing at this point. So therefore, it would sort of dull the excitement.
I get you. How was the transition from boxing and going into bare knuckle? And what weight do you compete at bare knuckle?
Yeah, I'll be at 154 pounds, so it'll be super welterweight. I won championship in boxing at super lightweight and welterweight, so it'll be the next weight class up.
Yeah.
And who knows if I can achieve a world championship, I'll have one weight championships in three weight classes, but two of them in boxing, one of them in BKB. That would again that gives me a vision, it gives me a goal, so it gives me something more to strive for, to work hard for. I think you can't just be motivated for money because otherwise, it's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to just be motivated when it's just money. There's a lot of ways to make money, but I think when you have a sense of self worth, self accomplishment by accomplishing certain things, I think it adds a little bit of luster to the accomplishment. So that's why BKB it is.
What'd you think about the fights in Fresno? And how tough was it? I mean, but it came natural to you to make that transition from inside of the ring to outside of the ring commentating.
I thought the fights in Fresno were good. I thought we had a solid main event. With Pro Box TV, we typically have some really good cards. That's my main commentating job right now is a Pro Box TV. And we typically put on some good cards. So I wasn't surprised that we had yet another good card on Saturday. It's just a shame that it got kind of overridden by the Zone card, which was a huge card that night, Belanga versus Shiraz and Shakur Stevenson against Zepeda. But I thought we had a really fun card. I thought Verone and Vladimir Hernandez was a really good barn burner type of fight. Erdenbot, the Mongolian, I would really like to see him in a bigger fight. He's been impressive every single time I've seen him at 130 pounds on Pro Box several times, and I'd really love for him to get a big opportunity. But that's the problem with boxing. Sometimes you're so good and you're not connected with the right people, and you'll never get a shot because you're that good and you're too dangerous. I hope that's not the case with Erdenbot because I think he's been super impressive every time. I was impressed with Akitsugi, who's a very impressive bantamweight who's from Japan, living in LA now. I've seen him several times, and he's been very impressive. I'd love to see him get put in position for a title shot. We've had some pretty impressive fighters on Pro Boxing, pretty impressive fights. Verone and Vladimir Hernandez was a terrific main event. As far as transitioning to commentating, I've always been somebody who talks a lot. I even as a baby, my parents told me I learned to talk very early, very young. So, even young by the standards of babies. So, I guess I've always had sort of that genetic in me to be talkative. And so it kind of worked out that I, wound up in the commentating booth,
I noticed some of the fights, Paulie, that you've been in, and I'm thinking, okay, and I'm trying to tell my girl, I go, watch, just listen, just give him a second, because you're like a fighter on some other networks. You start off slow, then you're kind of okay, and then when it's going, I said, boom, the takeover already happened. You're already letting
Yeah.
everybody know what the do's and don'ts about the fighter, what he did in the earlier rounds, why he invested, and now it's paying off. Now the right hand is landing. Now he's shortening his left hook to the body, punching the arms, and then you become alive. So are you a slow starter when it comes to commentating, or is that just some certain events?
I think you have to give talking points to the fans for things to look for based on the homework you've done on the two fighters, and then
Yeah.
let the fight develop, and then see how those things sort of unfold or not, and so then you actually tell the people what's going on. I think early on you can't tell the people what's going on because not enough has happened yet. So you sort of set the table by giving the personality traits and the character traits as fighters of the two fighters, so that maybe you give the fans something to look for first, and then as the fight progresses, some things may happen the way they're designed to happen, and some things don't. And so you break it down as to why this might be happening, or why this other thing is happening instead of this other thing that you may have expected that's not happening. And I think that that's why it starts to pick up as the fight progresses, because then there's more information to sort of bring out and talk about. Also, Richard, if you've done some commentating, so not every fight is exciting. And some fights are good, some
Yeah.
fights are bad, some fights are
Yeah.
dull, some fights are exciting. Fights. So I think it's important for the commentator to figure out something to bring out about the fight that can be interesting, even if it's not exciting. This is happening because of this, or maybe if he would throw more punches this way, maybe set it up off this jab, he could set up more combinations off this, and he needs to be throwing more punches. And instead of saying, they're not throwing punches, it's boring. Larry Merchant used to do that. I used to hate that. I used to get a lot of credit for TV, but I thought Larry Merchant was good on TV because he was a personality, not because he was an analyst. I thought he sucked as an analyst, but he was a TV personality, so they put him on TV. But I think it's important not to go that route and just say, these guys just need to throw more punches. I think, there are things that sometimes can slip up and you say that, but I think the responsibility of the analyst is to explain why certain things are happening, or maybe why they might not be happening, and what has to change in order for them to start happening. You do your best.
So how much preparation do you need? And what's your day like when you prepare yourself to commentate?
It depends. Sometimes I'm more familiar with the fighters, so less preparation is needed. If I'm not as familiar with the fighters, more preparation is needed. I can remember when I worked at Showtime, I was fighting and commentating at the same time. So, it was all my generation that I was commentating. I knew everything about those fighters already. So I barely had to do any homework. I was almost spoiled, because I knew most things, and I knew most things about the people than even the guys that did the homework, because I was a lot of times in the gyms with them or in the locker rooms with them. And so, I knew inside stuff, So I was more, but now with Pro Box, we're fighting we're not doing championship fights. We're doing middle tier fights. And it's also not my generation. There is more homework that has to be done. Of course, I have to go back. Some fighters I have to, acclimate myself to them, not just on their box rec, but also on their YouTube videos. Try to see if try to gauge a certain what is it about their style that works, what is it about their style that doesn't work, how it's going to blend with this other fighter and his style. So yeah, now there's more homework that needs to be done, of course.
Well, I know I'm not going to ask to ever spar with you, even though there is a big weight difference, but I would love one day to sit down and commentate with you and learn from you, because I think you're one of the best. I think you and Max are one of the best. Of course, Jim Lampley is Jim Lampley, and
Yeah.
it is what it is. I mean, he paved the way, but as far as Max Callum and yourself, I think you guys are the best in the world.
Yeah. I think Jim is a great blow by blow guy with a good analyst. Is very, very solid. I think that combination together has to go well.
Yes, it does. And I also like the way Abner Mott is. He knows how to handle the stick very well too.
Abner is good too. He's had a lot of experience, so he can also, bring out. That's a good thing about a fighter with a lot of experience. He can also bring out the, things based on his experiences and combine them with, what he sees in the ring, and it gives sort of more layers to the viewer.
Who did you analyze as a commentator and got your own pointers from and said, okay, I kind of dig what he's doing, but put your own flavor on it? Who did you watch open doors?
I
Who
gotta
did you
say,
not mimic, but just learn from?
I didn't really view anybody because I sort of stumbled into the analysis work. I didn't ever think I'd really be an analyst. I fell into it during my boxing career, so I wasn't really thinking about it. So I never really got to view an analyst from the viewpoint of, oh, I want to try to see what they do well because maybe I want to be an analyst. I liked analysts. They were analysts I liked, analysts I didn't like. Guys like Max and Jim, I also liked, I remember Max in the Friday Night Fights days in the studio. I like Teddy Atlas, for example. I liked certain guys, and there were certain guys I wasn't crazy about. But either way, I wasn't viewing them from the perspective of, oh, let me see what they do and don't do because I want to be an analyst one day. That never came my way because I didn't think I'd be an analyst. I never really thought. I mean, some people would say like, "Oh, you should be an analyst," but I was fighting, didn't really think about it, and I sort of stumbled into it.
I don't think you just stumbled into it. You dove right into it. There was no filling out process. You were like a pitcher that's been in the bullpen 20 minutes and he's already throwing strikes. You dove right into it.
Yeah. And maybe that was better. Maybe I didn't get to overthink. I just kind of did it and, it was kind of more natural. Maybe that was the best way for me,
Yeah, well, the best thing was some network bringing you back. And I knew it was going to be somebody. I didn't know who it was. You don't just leave a Corvette in the garage. You got to take it out.
Yeah, it's got to be driven. Yeah, it's got to be driven a little bit, yeah. But it's definitely something I enjoy, and it doesn't really feel like work, Sometimes the travel gets heavy, but otherwise it's fine.
Yes. Now listen, I'm going to ask you the question that everybody's been asking you and everybody's come up to you and you're probably up to here with it, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to try to put it in a different way. What is it going to take for, instead of going Crawford first, what is it going to take for Canelo to be successful against Bud Crawford if he starts to give him angles and starts to show different types of pressure that he's never faced or has never seen before? This segment is sponsored by the MALDONADO Brothers, proudly serving the Central Valley for over 25 years. From Visalia to Chowchilla, whether it's an expert tree service or professional landscaping, we offer free estimates and a team you can trust. Voted best in Central California for 2024 and aiming for a repeat in 2025. Call 559-994-7746 today and let's bring your outdoor vision to life. Superior quality to create your perfect environment.
I think Canelo, to be successful, has to use the advantage he has in this fight. And to me, the biggest advantage he has in this fight is the physicality, that he's a bigger fighter, and his body punching. I think he's got to make sure he uses his physicality to close the gap and then get to the body of Canelo. And I think those two things, if he's able to do those things, I think the smaller Crawford will have a lot of problems. But of course, the smaller Crawford, for me, is a superior boxer, and he has a lot of different weapons to try to offset that. But for me, the fact that Canelo is bigger makes it a possibility. If these two were naturally the same size, I don't think this fight will be close. I think Crawford will win easily. But I think the fact that Canelo has certain distinct advantages based on the difference in size, I think may give him a slight edge if he plays his cards right and if he's able to, press Crawford, make him uncomfortable, and then at those close quarters, if he's able to he's first got to press him correctly in order to get to close quarters. But if he's able to be in close quarters, those body shots that Canelo is known for could pay dividends against a smaller guy.
If you were in the corner of Bud Crawford, it's fourth round. Both men have already established respect. What advice would you give him? What would you tell him to work on, or I think, what would you just tell him as he's getting off the stool to enter the fifth round?
I think Crawford's biggest advantage is the fact that he's a better boxer, keep the fight at range with the long jab. But also, one of the big advantages Crawford has over every opponent is the fact that he very fluidly switches stances. And I think, these guys will switch stances, but they're not very fluid with it. Sometimes from your backup stance, your defense is not as good. Crawford can fight out of both stances. His defense is solid out of both stances. So I think a lot of these, and he's a master boxer out of both stances. He's probably a better boxer than most guys, even in his backup stance, So I think he needs to have a balance in the creativity in which he switches and boxes and because he can do all these things, but he's got to balance it in a way where it's creative enough that it offsets Canelo in various ways. And so I think it starts with the jab, but I don't think it has to necessarily end with the jab. I think he's also got to get to the body. I think he's an underrated body puncher as well. He's got some stoppages over guys with body punches. He's hurt some guys to the body. I can remember for example, the Julius Ndongo knockout at 140 pounds with a body shot. Crawford is a bit of an underrated body puncher himself. I think he too has to pick moments to go to the body, but I think he can't linger on the inside. I think he has to stay in the middle of the long range. because he lingers on the inside. Canelo will get to the body, and he's a stronger puncher. He's a bigger guy. But I think he, in his deceptive ways of throwing combination, throwing punches, I think he has to sneak in some body shots as well and keep the fight at the distance of the jab. I don't think Canelo's jab is very good, honestly. He rarely uses a pretty good jab. So if Crawford can establish a good jab, especially out of both stances, he can offset that the good things that Canelo does.
Well, very well said. Listen, man, Father Time is undefeated, but you know what? He really hasn't been able to, tap Manny Pacquiao out just yet. You know,
Yeah.
they're going round and round. Is Manny Pacquiao's fight going to be against Father Time or his opponent this Saturday? Because he's looking very good. He's looking very refreshed.
I think it's more against Father Time. Yeah, we'll see when he's in the ring with a mobile opponent. You know, and a guy a live body and not just a heavy bag. But I think it's against Father Time. I think Barrios, if Manny was anywhere near his prime, Barrios wouldn't stand a chance. I think Barrios has a chance right now, and he's favored because it's an older Pacquiao, and we don't really know what we're going to see. Remember, Pacquiao faded in the second half of the Ugas fight. I think Pacquiao's best chance is an early knockout, first half of the fight. If Pacquiao doesn't get Barrios out in the first half of the fight, I'm not sure he's going to have enough to, coast the second half of the fight and hold on to the fight. Because at 46, he wasn't doing that in the Ugas fight, let alone at 46 years old. Because Barrios, for all his flaws, punches pretty hard. So I think if Pacquiao's going to get him, it's going to be early.
That card is stacked. I mean, that whole card is stacked, and any one of those fights can easily be a main event on a different network.
Fundora and Zeus is another really interesting fight that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
the rematch.
Yeah, I want to see what the transition that he makes from the last time. From getting inside and dealing with that cut, and see what he does this time. And I want to see, how much you become better once you become a world champion. It's like 25% better because
Fundora's on a roll.
And you're sharper.
Yeah, Fundora's on a roll, and Zoo's been knocked out since by Murtazalia, who's sort of becoming the boogeyman of that weight class, and nobody wants to go near him, and nobody talks about him. That's a scary guy. But Fundora, he's growing in confidence. He's done well since. It's an interesting fight this time around. The first time I couldn't see Zoo losing it. I think without the cut, he probably would have knocked Fundora out. But the second time now, I'm very curious. I'm trying to see where Zoo's head is at. He only came back with a win over Joey Spencer. It was very limited. This is a tough fight. We'll see.
Yeah, and I kind of question that chin. After being stopped in the fashion that he was stopped, because prior to the stoppage, he took some major shots.
Yeah, I agree. Murtazalia is a beast, but sometimes you fight a guy like that and you're not the same anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. Now listen, I'm going to talk a fantasy match. If you had your way to ever share the ring with anybody in any era, even a different weight, who would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of admiration for Jake LaMotta. I like the movie Raging Bull. I like maybe Jake LaMotta. Sometimes people ask this question, but I really don't know how to answer it because it's not something that you really is realistic. So I don't give it a lot of thought. But yeah, I guess maybe Jake LaMotta or one of those guys from that era, Carmen Basilio. Who knows?
Okay, well let's stay on this era then. Let's stay on this a little bit. Who wins, Pernell Whitaker or Floyd Mayweather?
That's a great question, man. I'm not sure, man. I'm really not sure how to answer that one. I think the big question that people make a lot of times is Duran or Whitaker at lightweight because they was two unbelievable lightweights. And I pick in that fight. I pick Whitaker. People say, "Oh no, Duran at lightweight was unstoppable, was unbeatable." But I feel like Duran, when he faced slicksters that were slick and stayed within their slickness, he was very frustrated. I look at the Leonard rematch and I look at the Benitez fight as well. And people say, "Oh, that was at a higher weight." Yes, but mindset is still mindset. He was frustrated by the slickness. So from that perspective, I would pick Whitaker to beat Duran in a lightweight showdown at their best in lightweight. But I it's fights we're never going to see, man. But they're great talking points. They're great discussions.
They are. I got one more. Tommy Hitman Hearns or Bud Crawford at 147.
I think the Hitman is unbeatable at welterweight. I think even Leonard kind of pulled it out of his ass when he got the stoppage. He was losing the fight. That's a 1 in 100 chance that probably if they fought 100 times, Hearns would win 99 times. That was the one time Leonard would have won that fight. And we never saw a rematch for 8 years because of it. I think Hearns at welterweight is the biggest machine in the history of boxing. I think.
I agree.
And kudos to Leonard for getting that win, but that is lightning in a bottle. He was on his way to losing that fight. He probably loses any other night. It's a great win for the resume and for his brand and image. But man, Hearns at welterweight, I don't think there's a welterweight in history that beats Hearns at welterweight.
Malignaggi or Camacho?
Camacho, he's faster, he's more polished, and especially Camacho pre-Edwin Rosario, that is one of the best fighters ever. After Rosario, I think he changed a little bit and became more defensive minded, but the Camacho pre-Edwin Rosario is I used to watch videos of and just be in awe, and that's still in awe. If I put on a video of Hector Camacho and he fights before the Edwin Rosario fight, it's like poetry in motion.
Yes. A lot of people seem to forget he didn't always move around until he got heavier, until he moved up in weight.
Yeah.
He's never been knocked out and had an iron chin.
Yeah.
And he used to knock people out of there, get them out of there with hand speed.
No, the early on, before the Rosario fight, he was very aggressive with that speed. He had the same speed, was very aggressive, and very fluid and smooth with it too.
Yes, exactly. And actually until Rosario came in, I mean, it was going to be, do you remember Livingstone Bramble against Camacho? They were getting ready to make that fight happen.
Yeah. Livingstone Bramble, man. Bramble hung around so long. I sparred him.
Oh, you got to spar with him?
Yeah.
I remember he had an older Mercedes Benz.
Yeah.
Where you spar him at? Johnny Tacos or where?
I sparred him at Richard Steele's boxing gym. Remember, Richard Steele used to have a boxing gym back in the early 2000s, and I was in Vegas training. And Livingston was a switch hitter. I was training for a southpaw, and so we brought in Livingston was in the gym, and we sparred a few rounds. Put him in the mix. He was older by then.
Who had the best chin in boxing, and who has it today?
Best chin in boxing today?
No, who had the best chin, and who has it today? Name some back then.
Possibly Canelo. The best chin I've seen, and probably James Toney, but possibly Canelo. Maybe Marvin Hagler.
Yeah.
Again, one of these questions that can be debated. There's not really a right. Ray Mercer had a great chin, but I
Tex Cobb.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not really a right answer. You could throw some good names in the mix though and debate them.
Yeah. I mean, Whitaker had a great chin too. That's because he was just so elusive. And James Toney actually, I'm not clowning him, but he had a very small target, had a small head, and just know how to roll.
But James used to fight at close range all the time, and so he did get hit.
Absolutely,
he was slick, but he was at close range all the time. Whitaker, solid chin, but he got dropped by Mayweather. He got dropped by Trinidad. He did go down. Whitaker just had good recovery. He was a solid boxer. Yeah, he'd go down at times.
Yeah. I'm surprised that Camacho never mixed it up with Maldrick Taylor or Pernell Whitaker.
Yes, sometimes that's the way it goes. Sometimes I look at it like Buddy McGirt and Julio Cesar Chavez. I thought that would have been a good fight. Never happened. So sometimes some fights don't happen.
Yeah, or even Oscar De La Hoya and Costa Azul.
Yeah, exactly. Could have been. Every generation has these what if fights that somehow they slip below the radar. Mike McCallum against basically a lot of those top guys that didn't fight him. Mike McCallum was an amazing fighter. And he also a guy with a good chin.
Body snatch.
A lot of guys didn't fight him either.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a knockout artist, Julian the Hawk Jackson. My man, I mean, he put you to sleep different. And all it takes is 10 seconds, but sometimes the ref would just wave it off at 5.
Yeah. No, I remember the Terry Norris knockout was vicious. Terry boxed so well in the first round, and then he went to sleep in the second round. But that was one of the Mike McCallum's actually impressive wins. Was the win over Julian Jackson? Destroyed him. Really impressive. Yeah. Really impressive. Mike McCallum against Jackson.
Yes, exactly. I mean, those are some nice fights right there. Frankie Randall, the surgeon, and you got to give it up to Don King in that era. He put the best fights together in the rematches with the Simon Browns and Terry Norris and Jesse James Lejas, Azuma Nelson, Jeff Phoenix. The list goes on.
Yeah, that was a good era in boxing, man. Sometimes we long for it because nowadays you got guys who are really good fighters, but they sort of share orbits and they never actually share the ring in the fight. They just share the limelight together, but never actually fight each other. Yeah,
or they'll put the friend button on it, so that's a way of negotiating.
Yeah.
So, if you could make a change in boxing today, what would it be? A major change.
Enforce mandatory is being enforced. Top fighters having to fight the next best contenders. It's easier said than done. I think there's, you eliminate the politics of it, promotional barriers, network barriers. There's so many layers. You can't just eliminate one, but then you say, oh, well, you eliminate this one, but then you have this problem. So a lot of the problems are multi-layered. You need to eliminate like 3-4 things in order to solve one problem, and so it's a problem. But I think, what's happening with Riyadh's season in Turkey Al-Sheikh, he's got enough money to make some of these fights happen. So hopefully that can keep happening, because a lot of the cards with Riyadh's season, a high level, a world championship level, and they're making some solid matchups. So hopefully they can, do more of that,
Are you a fan of open scoring?
No, I'm not. I'm not a fan of open scoring, because I think a fighter will start running and make it a marathon if he's too far ahead.
That's true. See, a lot of people, that's the flip side about it. A lot of people that I've asked that question will say, oh, okay, it'll make him hungry because he knows he's behind. Well, the guy knows he's a win, and he's not going to extend himself. He's not going to put himself at risk. So therefore, you're going to have a boring fight.
Yeah, and then the other guy needs a 10-8 round, and the guy, it's harder to knock down a guy who's running, So
exactly.
You need it would eliminate engaging. I'm not a fan of it. No.
They don't have to be huge names, just names of people that need to fight. If you, I'm gonna put the matchmaker's hat on you. If you could put together a fight, who would it be? You can even name a couple of them if you want.
Best fight
guys
right
that
now
just need to fight at this point in their career.
The best fight that can be made right now in boxing for me is Inoue against Nakatani. For me, that's the best fight in boxing that can be made right now. Maybe in a year it'll change. Year to year, sometimes these things change, but right now, you asking me on July 16th, 2025, what's the best fight in boxing that can be made? My opinion of it is Inoue against Nakatani. That's the best fight in boxing.
Okay. Well, mine is not so much that two champions are fighting, and no offense to them, because they're both former champions, former unified champions. I just think in this stage in their career, they need to fight each other. And I'm talking about Regis Prograis taking on Jose Ramirez.
I mean, sometimes when fighters are just at their best and they fight each other, it can be a pretty good fight. I think that, it's possibly a solid fight, even past their primes, that people would tune into it, But I don't think it's one of the best fights that can be made anymore. But it's a curiosity fight for sure, and people will probably tune in.
I just say it because I'm thinking they're both sticking around to fight, so I'd hate to see either one take on a young combatant warrior like Teofimo Lopez, or I'd like to see them possibly fight each other, because at one time it was leading towards that, but it just maybe just me as a fan, I'd like to see that happen.
I could see that happen. I could be excited for that fight.
Exactly. Well, listen, man, I appreciate your time. And, if there's anybody out there that you need to give a shout out to, or anything you want to share the platform with, because, I know Oscar Valdez went back to his original trainer today with Manny Robles. He left Eddie Reynoso.
Okay. That's interesting. That's news that hits, of course. That's news that hits. Also, Turkey Al-Sheikh announced that he's not going to do pay-per-views anymore. Everything will be free on the zone app. That's big boxing news to that. Hopefully things like that continue. Thanks for having me on the show, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You know what? And at the same time, bro, I had to pick your brain. I just think that you're one of the sharpest ones out there, and I'm being real. I'm not jockeying you or anything.
No,
just
appreciate it.
When I went there, when I knew you was there, and I knew who everybody was there, I kept saying to myself, I just got to bump into Paulie. I got to talk to him. I said, he looked like a level dude, and you were. You sit here, take my number down. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Good conversation, good chat, good boxing chatter. Well, till next time, Richard. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our guest, ladies and gentlemen, the Magic Man himself. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do at www.youtube.com/thefightersvoice. Remember, every fighter has a voice, and so do you. As always, it's a wrap. Thumbs up for Richie.
It's always voiceography at its finest. So on behalf of Richard Ortiz, the special guests, saying hasta luego, babies. And always, thanks for listening.